Hello everybody, this is Brooke aka Supernatural Summer 34 and today we are back at it with another speed build. Today's speed build is a vet clinic for Strangerville and I placed it where the library was. I don't know if that means that the scientists will show up at the lot, but I am of the opinion that every world needs a vet clinic. And it bothers me that so few people build them outside of Brindleton Bay, so I built one here. But one thing I'd like to say before we get too far into the video and I forget, when placing this lot off of the gallery, if you want your sim to show up on the front of the lot, then you have to rotate it. I didn't realize that until I took my sim here. But another thing about rotating the lot is that when you rotate it, the pathways are off-center, because in order to re-center it, I had to leave a line of tiles empty. So if you flip it, you'd want to switch the line of tiles that's empty to the other side. I don't really know if that makes sense, so I'm sorry, but hopefully you get what I mean. But I went for a very fancy style with this vet clinic, even though most of the ones I've seen have been rather boxy and modern. I thought it fit the world really well, though, and the floor plan works out pretty well as well. It took me a while, though, because the area for sitting and waiting wasn't coming to me very easily. I originally wanted to put closets where the seating area is, but I ended up fitting closets in several other places that didn't interfere with my need for a seating area. This build is a functional vet clinic, by the way. It has everything your sim and their pet could possibly need, like 4 exam tables and a surgery station. It also has a couple chest tables in some places if you'd rather not watch your pet get their shots and stuff, because I know it's likely very repetitive by this point. And I know that I have balconies and porch areas on the build, but none of them are accessible because it didn't work for the floor plan. This build actually has been play tested simply because Marilyn's dog, Sugar, was in need of a visit to the vet right after I built this. The only thing not play tested is the surgery station, but I am almost certain that it will function fine. Originally, the floor plan wouldn't have allowed for me to fit it, but I expand the rooms on either side of the building, and that's actually how I noticed that the build isn't symmetrical to the lot. That's why I leave a row of tiles blank on one side, because that fixed my little problem nicely. While building it, kind of irritated me that there was nothing next to the line, but I know that the line signaling the edge of the lot won't be there when I actually plan the build. The roofing on this build is extremely simple, though originally I was going to do something a little fancier. I decided against it in the end, though, but I still think the roofing works well for the build. Although there was this weird thing where if the roofing was a little higher, sharper, angled, I can't think of the word, but when that happened you could see the columns through it, so I did change them to not be so high, which is kind of a shame because I think the more angled roofing works well for this style of build. I used the columns from Realm of Magic because a lot of other fancier ones gave me Greek vibes, and that's not what I wanted. Obviously, or I guess perhaps not super obviously, but Strangerville is based off of the American West, more specifically in Arizona due to the whole Area 51 parallel, so I wanted the styles of the builds to suit that. In some builds I went for a very Gold Rush era style, with the front piece on the roof and the wooden building, like with the restaurant in Marilyn's house. And then on the cemetery and this vet clinic, I went more colonial with the builds, with a lot of white and the tall columns and all that. Then there's obviously the Victorian houses up in the top, which I will be sharing sometime soon. I think next week, depending on how good I am at voiceovers. And finally is the shotgun style of Beck's house, which I'm not sure where the inspiration came from. I just know that the Sims team went for that style on some of the houses originally. Oh, and there's also the trailer that isn't actually a trailer. But I don't really know what style I went for with that. I don't even know that I like the exterior of that build very much, but it's fine. I'll change it if I feel like it. But the exterior of the actual building is almost complete, and it's pretty simple. I messed with the roof color for a little bit, but eventually I decide on the darkest roof color available. I also thought the build looked a little dark, so I used the wood paneling from Spa Day on some places. That wood paneling is so good, by the way, because the actual siding we have in game doesn't really have a true white or a couple other good colors, so I actually think I use the Spa Day paneling most of the time rather than the base game paneling. I also obviously do a little bit of landscaping on this build, but I kept it pretty minimal, seeing as it's both a community lot and the desert. I do these little planter boxes with the fencing and then just fill them in with some low-lying flowers, some trees, and some bushy flowers in a, I think, bright pink color. I'm pretty sure it's the bright pink color because I wanted to add some color to the build because it's actually pretty bland in color. The inside is not, however, because I wanted to decorate the exam rooms because I figured that there are certain doctors who claim certain exam rooms as their office and decorate them how they'd like them for them to be decorated. I don't know too much about how vet clinics look on the inside. I don't think I've ever actually been inside one, but based off of the other builds I've seen of this lot type, I'm pretty close. I also based it off of what my doctor's offices have always looked like, just because I figured they aren't too different. And I didn't want the outside to be completely useless, so I add some seating areas and some chess tables, though I don't know if I add the chess tables right now. I figured that you could visit this lot even without your pet because it's in the center of town and it's a pretty good lot for screenshots. It also doesn't really look like a vet clinic from the outside. I feel like it could probably pass for a city hall if it weren't for the sign and the little bow sticker. Oh, no, the little sticker that I ended up putting in the door. It's not a bow sticker. But we've finally moved on to the interior, and I go for a rich brown and cream color scheme. I feel like this wasn't always a vet clinic. I think it might have been a city hall at one point, but they wound up getting rid of the mayor system because the town is small enough where they don't need it, but they did need a vet clinic. I feel like there aren't many towns that are close by, and I feel like this town was established as a mining town, but when mining as a business kind of died down a bit, a lot of them joined the military. Others became scientists. I think in my interpretation of the town, however, they never wound up getting the whole alien problem. I think this town is exactly how they portrayed it in the trailer for the pack. Calm, quiet, and beautiful. I don't really like the whole Strangerville ickiness outside of saves where my main focus is playing with it, so I think this town had contact with aliens, but they hide their identity and they just want to live a normal life among humans. But here is where I add the chess tables, and it's kind of boring and uniform, but I think most things community lot-wise are going to be boring and uniform. But then we move on to the entryway to the vet clinic, which comes together really quickly. I place down these seats that Vixella always uses in her houses, but I rarely use because they really look like church pews to me, like comfy church pews. Granted, I've never really been to a classic church with actual wooden pews and all that. My childhood church had an enormous auditorium that could probably seat around 200 people, probably more, actually, and honestly, in the back you couldn't hear the preacher at all. I only went to the auditorium on like Christmas and Easter though because I was young enough where I was still going to kids' church. That was a lot of fun though. I actually met this guy at a Christmas party for my kids' church one year and we really hit it off. Neither of us had phones at the time though, so I haven't really talked to him since. He was really sweet though, and I think he was a cheerleader, which was really cool. Anyway, then I went to my second church, which was pretty small, but they had a very industrial vibe, and I couldn't seat too many people. They also used folding chairs, I'm pretty sure, so yeah, I've never really used a pew. I don't really go to church anymore, though. I mostly go to youth group now, and that's mostly to talk to people. But I finally moved on to the first exam room. They all have a very similar layout, and they all have the same basic furniture, because that really just makes sense. The person who kind of claimed this room is very boho, I think, kind of a hippie. They went into veterinary medicine because they're very passionate about animals and animal abuse. I think they always run extra tests to make sure that the animal is fine mentally, and they also pay special attention to how the animal behaves around their owner, because that can tell a lot about how the animal is treated at home. I read something that said that most dogs actually aren't aggressive to their abusers, but they cower and avoid them, which was interesting to me because dogs kind of have this connotation around them that they're fighters and protectors and guards, so you'd expect them to hurt someone who hurt them. I think they have the same complex that abused humans have, though, where they think that it must be their fault somehow. This vet will have none of that, though. I think no matter what the dog or cat does to her, save for actually trying to kill her, she'll always remain sweet towards them. My sister actually wants to be a vet, and I'm really happy that she found something she wants to pursue so badly. I think she'll be a great vet, and anyone who does anything to any animal probably would not survive her anger because she has such a strong sense of justice. But then we move on to the second exam room, which is probably for a middle-aged person, I think, someone who has lots of experience with animals. I think they probably devote all of their time to animals, and their spouse probably owns an animal shelter. They probably have about 1 million animals at home and they just about smother them with their love. I think this person is very hospitable, and any time they've had to put an animal down, they've cried alongside the owner. To be honest, if I were a vet, I'd probably cry too. Actually, I might not even be able to do it. I think my fear of the fear of my pets dying is one of the reasons that when I'm older, I won't be having one. I mean, there's also the fear that I won't take care of them right because I can hardly take care of myself. I don't need something else that's entirely dependent on me. But another thing about this vet is that they're gay, which I thought was really cute because you don't see a lot of gay older couples. You guys should let me know if you'd like to see a video from me where I make these people in Create a Sim because I'd love to do that. I haven't done a Create a Sim in a couple of weeks, I don't think. I mean, unless you count the Caliente makeover that came out on Wednesday, but I don't really think really count those as Create a Sims. I think they're obviously makeovers. But the paintings that I hang at the top of the landing here are probably past mayors, and they didn't remove them after the renovation because they thought it would be disrespectful. This hallway goes by pretty quickly though, and we actually moved to onto the surgery room right here. I went for a blue theme with this room, but other than that I didn't really give it much personality because I didn't figure any one person had access to this room. I put a medicine crafting table in here because I think a lot of people don't include those in their vet clinics, which makes it where they aren't super ownable, I think. I've never actually owned a venue in The Sims 4 though, so I could be wrong, but I watched Neeksel's Cats and Dogs Let's Play and she used that thing all the time. But then we move on to the next exam room, which I think belongs to the newbie vet. They probably just graduated from veterinary school, so they're in their mid-20s, so they got the smallest room. I think they're really shy and don't really have many friends. I think animals are really most of the social interaction they get, but their coworkers are trying to include them, and they just don't know how to accept. They probably have a lot of negative self-talk happening in their brain, but I know that with some effort that'll be pushed away in favor of self-worth. I think they mostly want to work on puppies and kittens, and they probably have a very calming demeanor when they give the little guys shots and stuff. I think they probably have a couple of cats at home. I think they'd probably get along really well with Katarina Lynx, so maybe they were childhood friends until one of them had to move away. But this next one is someone in their late 20s. I think they have really colorful hair, and they've probably wanted to be a vet since they were very little. They're probably pretty silly, but they also worked really hard to get here, and they're really, really good at their job. I think they focus a lot on people's comfort and try to make sure that everyone's at ease while doing this. They probably explain things really well and in such a clear way that the owners immediately get a sense that they know what they're doing, despite their scatterbrain. But we're actually almost finished with the build, and I've kind of run out of things to talk about, but let me see if I can think of something. Well, I did add bathrooms to this build, complete with a litter box for the cats. There are 2 bathrooms, both of which look almost exactly the same, just with different paintings. They go by pretty quickly because they're just 2x3 rooms, and after that all I do is add some signs to the build to signify what it actually is. I wish we had more sign symbols or decals, by the way, because for this and the restaurant I did in this world, I really struggled with finding ones that fit. Same with billboards. I feel like all of the billboards, aside from the one I think it's from Strangerville, all of the other ones are pretty modern, which makes finding one for less modern builds kind of hard. I actually don't think we've gotten any new sign decals since Cats and Dogs, and no new billboards since Strangerville, so it's been a couple of years. But we're actually almost to the screenshots, which means we only have about a minute left in the video. I'm not going to go yet though, just because I like talking through the screenshots. I feel like it makes people more likely to watch them because I never really watch the screenshots when it's just music. I've actually pretty much omitted music from my videos, even though I still have the little copyright disclaimer in the description, so I should probably remove that. Speaking of my description, don't forget to look in it to see what this build is titled on the gallery, because they have a ridiculously short character limit, so I actually have to edit it from what it was in the video usually. But I think now I've officially run out of things to talk about. I mean, the build is really pretty, I think. I think the outside looks really good, which isn't usually something I think with community lots, because a lot of the time my community lots end up looking like a house, which just doesn't fit right. I'm glad I've kind of improved that, though, because if you look at my older builds, you can definitely see that. But we are coming up on the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, and I will see you all soon.